The Ashworth Affair, a wild ride you won't forget. Imagine stepping into 1907 in Edwardian England, a place buzzing with carriages and flickering gas lamps, where the high society thrives in gentlemen's clubs and sprawling estates. London's streets are alive with the rhythmic clip-clop of horse hooves and the thrilling roar of shiny new motor cars. It's a time bursting with progress and innovation, but don't be fooled, secrets are hiding just beneath the surface. Behind those opulent marble walls, shadows linger, whispering stories that even the brightest electric lights can't illuminate. Picture the lavish parties where everyone is dressed to the nines, yet beneath the laughter and clinking glasses, there's an undercurrent of scandal and intrigue. The world may seem glamorous, but it's also a time of strict social norms and hidden truths. Can you feel the tension? It's like a thrilling novel waiting to unfold. Ashworth Hall was one such place. A towering estate on the outskirts of Surrey, its gardens manicured to perfection, its corridors echoing with the weight of family pride. The Ashworths were one of the oldest families in the county. Sir Reginald Ashworth, the patriarch, had served in Parliament, built his fortune on steel, and cultivated an image of unshakable respectability. But that image was about to crack. It began on an autumn evening when Sir Reginald hosted a gathering that would later be remembered only for its tragedy. The dining room blazed with candlelight, reflecting off crystal glasses and polished silver. The storm outside rattled against the tall windows, but inside, conversation flowed like the port wine. Around the table sat a curious mix of guests. There was Lady Margaret Ashworth, the Sir's much younger wife, striking in emerald silk, whose beauty masked the unease in her eyes. To her right sat Dr. Henry Caldwell, the family physician, calm, precise, and too attentive to the lady's every word. Across from them was Charles Pembroke, a business partner whose investments with Sir Reginald had soured, leaving resentment simmering beneath his polished manners. Near him sat Violet Harrington, Lady Margaret's closest confidant, young, charming, and never far from gossip. At the far end of the table, a quieter presence, Thomas Briggs, the butler of 30 years, a man who knew every door, every secret drawer, every whispered quarrel in the house. And finally, seated with awkward posture, was Edward Ashworth the Sir's son from his first marriage, who had recently returned from abroad under a cloud of scandal. The meal stretched on, filled with forced laughter, the occasional sharp remark from Sir Reginald, and the quiet tension of unspoken grievances. Just before the hour struck 10, Sir Reginald rose, glass in hand. To Ashworth Hall, he declared, his voice booming. Nay, it stand longer than any of us. The toast was echoed, glasses clinked, and then chaos. The lights flickered once, twice, and plunged the room into sudden darkness. Gas lamps hissed, candles guttered. For a heartbeat, the only sound was the storm outside. Then came a cry, a sharp, guttural cry, and the crash of glass. By the time the lights sputtered back to life, Sir Reginald Ashworth lay sprawled across the carpet, his face contorted, his glass shattered beside him. The guests froze. Lady Margaret screamed. Dr. Caldwell rushed to his side, pressing fingers to the man's neck, then shaking his head. He's gone, the doctor said. Poison. The word spread through the room like fire. Poison, a locked room puzzle of a different sort, for the glasses on the table had been filled from the same decanter. And yet only one man was dead. The police were called at once, but the storm delayed their arrival. Hours passed in uneasy waiting. In that time, suspicion bloomed like mold in damp air. Why had the lights failed at the very moment of his death? Why was his glass shattered, and not the others? And who, in this room, had reason to want Sir Reginald gone? Inspector Julian Rathbone arrived close to dawn. He was tall, with a face carved in patience, and a voice quiet enough to draw out truth. He began his work with care, circling the table, studying each guest as though they were pieces in a painting. He questioned Lady Margaret first. Her emerald dress was creased, her hands still trembling. I was by his side, she said. I drank from the same bottle, yet I live. I don't understand it. Her grief seemed genuine, but her gaze flickered toward Dr. Caldwell more than once. The doctor, cool and precise, admitted to nothing beyond loyalty. I treated Sir Reginald for years, he said. His heart was weak, but this was no natural failure. I smelled it at once. Arsenic. Charles Pembroke, the business partner, shifted uncomfortably when asked. His investments had collapsed, leaving him indebted to Sir Reginald. But would I kill him and risk the gallows? No, Inspector, I value my neck too much. Yet his hand twitched toward his pocket, where Rathbone suspected unpaid bills burned like coals. Violet Harrington, the confidante, wept softly. He was cruel to her, she said, nodding toward Lady Margaret. Everyone knew it. She never spoke, but we saw. You don't need poison to see how misery kills. Her words, though sympathetic, sowed seeds of suspicion in new soil. Edward, the son, stood pale and tight-lipped. Rumors of gambling debts and exile abroad followed him like smoke. He cut me out of everything, he spat. My own father, but I didn't poison him. I wanted to prove myself worthy again. His words were hot, but his eyes betrayed fear. And finally, the butler, Thomas Briggs, spoke quietly, respectfully. Sir Reginald was not a kind master, he admitted. But I served him faithfully. I poured no poison. I touched no glass, yet something in his stillness struck the inspector as to careful, to measured. Rathbone studied the room again. The decanter on the table was half full, untouched since the night before. He poured a glass himself, swirling the liquid beneath his nose. No smell. No trace of poison. Curious. He looked at the shattered glass near Sir Reginald's body. The rim glistened oddly, faint crystals clinging where the liquid had dried. He asked the butler, who fetched the glasses last evening. Briggs bowed his head. Aye, sir, I polished them myself. And where? Rathbone pressed. In the scullery, the butler said. The inspector nodded slowly. He turned to Lady Margaret. Did Sir Reginald ever allow anyone to serve him directly? Or did he demand his own place at the table, set apart? Her lips trembled. Always his own glass. He believed others unworthy of touching what he touched. That was the answer. The poison had not been in the wine. It had been in the glass itself, dusted onto the rim like sugar. Only Sir Reginald's glass had been prepared that way, but who had prepared it? The butler polished the glasses. Yes, but the scullery was not locked. Any guest could have slipped in if they knew Sir Reginald's habits well enough. Inspector Rathbone began to piece it together. Lady Margaret had motive, a life of cruelty, the promise of freedom. The doctor had knowledge, easy access to arsenic, cloaked in medical necessity. Edward had resentment and debts. Pembroke had financial ruin looming. Even Violet, the confidante, had whispered hatred of the man. But in the end, the inspector's eyes fell back on the butler. 30 years of service, 30 years of silent endurance under a tyrant's rule. He had chosen the glass. He had polished it alone. And he had known, better than anyone, that Sir Reginald would touch no other. When confronted, Briggs did not flinch. His voice was calm. Yes, he said, I did it. 30 years of service, of silence, of watching him grind down every soul in this house. He believed himself immortal. But even the proudest master must drink. He was taken away as dawn broke over Ashworth Hall. The guests dispersed in silence, each carrying their own private guilt, their own relief, their own unanswered questions. Lady Margaret wept in her chamber. Edward vanished back abroad. Pembroke sold what was left of his fortune, and the great house stood darker, emptier, a monument to pride undone. Inspector Rathbone slipped out of the estate, his coat brushing against the damp hedges. He had seen justice, but not victory. The Ashworth name would linger on, not in praise, but in scandal. Maybe that was punishment enough, right? The storm had passed. but the shadows it left would linger in Ashworth Hall forever.